Data analysts help retrieve, gather data, and organize it to help end users make business decisions. A lot of times during the interview, companies are evaluating skills of data analysts using Microsoft Excel. Over the years, Excel became very powerful, supporting a lot of data import tools, a lot of different ways of storing the data, and a lot of ways of reporting the data through reports and dashboards, and can easily be used to understand how skillful data analyst is. In this video, I will show with you sample Excel assessment test that could be used to gauge skills of data analyst. I will also share with you some insights related to data analyst job responsibilities, which you might be asked for as part of the interview. In this advanced Excel test for job interview, we will complete all the steps listed on the screen. Typically, employer provides you with the background. In this case, client manages ebook stores from website, and client provides you an export PDF file with the list of transactions as a PDF file imported from financial system to request you to analyze data. Now, in step 1, we'll import data from the PDF file, which is provided as a separate file. This is the PDF file that was provided, which was opened in Adobe PDF Reader. Typically, PDF files are not editable, and there's no direct way to import them into Microsoft Excel. To do that, we would need to use Microsoft Word as an intermediary. To bring this data into Excel, I'm going to launch Microsoft Word as a separate application, create a blank document, and then open this file, because Word allows us to opening the PDF files by browsing to that and click on the file name. Word asks me, Word will now convert PDF to an editable Word format. This may take a while. The resulting Word document will be optimized to allow you edit the text, so it might not look exactly like your original PDF, especially if your original file contained lots of graphic. We'll click OK on this message, and Word will bring all this data from PDF file into Microsoft Excel. Word mimics the table format of PDF file, so we should be able to just select the table. To do that, you just highlight all the columns and then select Copy. Once we go back to Excel, we'll create a new tab in Excel and we'll paste the data. Now we can mark step 1 as complete. One of the questions almost guaranteed in any data analyst interview is, what is the data analysis itself? Make sure to watch the entire video, as I will provide you with the comprehensive answer later in this video. In the next step, we would need to professionally format imported data to make it presentable. Let's go back to our sheet where we have data imported, and you can see that the first column is an extra column here in Excel because date has no other dates imported. And you can try it for yourself because you can download all the files listed in this video. Just make sure to look in the description. So what we'll do to format it professional, we'll do a couple things. We'll cut the title from the column header, and you see there are other headers here as well. We'll do a cut. We will paste it here in the next column B, and then we'll delete the entire column A. One of the best ways to professionally format the data is to uniquely identify column headers. You can then highlight them, make them bold, and change the background to make sure you emphasize them in your final document. Another tip is to use professional font. One of the fonts is Calibri or Tahoma that comes already with Excel. Now let's expand these columns to make sure they fit the size-wise, so we only have one line per row. And this does not expand into multiple lines. This way it looks professionally as well. So we'll pick the right size. Now let's select the entire table in Excel, and to do that we'll use shortcut Control-Shift-End to get us to the last cell of this range. And looks like column F is extra column as well, so we're gonna need to delete this column. And you see once we delete it, it changed the formatting. Looks like it had some extra information, some unnecessary information. So we'll expand a little bit column E by looking at the data. And also row 17 had a little bit longer address, so this helped as well. Let's do another selection, Control-Shift-End. And we'll just make the selection smaller, holding Control-Shift. We'll use the arrow to the left to reduce the selection size, and we need to do that so we can apply the borders, make the all borders and make it a single border. And we also need to highlight the header to make it look professional, and we use the fill of some light color. This is whatever your preference is, and I think it looks much more professional now. This way we can mark step 2 as complete. We will do it by applying the same format painter and reapplying it to the row 8. When thinking about the data as data analyst, it's important to think about input, storage, and output. Typically, you get data in the different formats, and you may need to import it into Excel directly or by performing some transformations. The way you store data in Excel is also very important. Best way to store data in Excel, by the way, is to use tables. Data output in Excel could be a summary pivot table, could be a chart, could be a report, or could be a dashboard. Output is very important because the effectiveness of the way you present the data to the end users determine how effectively can they make decisions based on your data. In the next step, we would need to describe the data we have imported into Excel. So let's go back to our table. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. And there are a couple techniques you can use to describe the data. Number one is obviously look at the data and understand what's in the columns. So we have date, ebook name, price, purchaser name, and purchaser address. So it's a list of transactions from the ebook sales. And you can also look at the background, and in the background it looks like it's the same data, similar type of data described, just to confirm that your hypothesis is correct. One of the best ways to describe the data is to understand what data represents. Also, you can look for the column headers. A lot of times they contain a lot of valuable information. Look common sense and then come up with the description that you can write and provide to the interviewer. Sometimes employer might ask you to put the written description here because there is no way for you to communicate this on the test. So you might want to type it in and put it into the column where they require to put you the answer. I typed in a description. Now you can use wrap text, which will make this column very large. So I might rather create another column here. And I created a column called written answer. So now I can cut this value and paste it in here. Format it so it aligned to the top, aligned to the left. Adjust the column a little bit, and this is our answer. Imported data contains a list of ebook transactions and includes date of transaction, name of ebook, price it was sold for, and name and address of the person who purchased it. And now we can mark step 3 as complete. To do that, we'll copy the value using Format Painter from the cell C8, and then we will paste it into the cell C9. In the next step, we would need to change tab title to Sales Data and also assign data types to imported columns in Excel. Selecting correct data type is very important, especially when we convert the data from the imported file into Excel table later as part of this exercise. To do that, first let's change the tab title. To do that, we will click on the tab and you see it became editable, and we'll just type Sales Data. And in the next step, we will need to assign data types here. To do that, you need to select the entire column, and this is the date data type. And you see right now it's general. So we would need to change it from general to short date. That's the most appropriate data type. This is the text because this is the name of the ebook. So we'll change it to text. Column C, we will change to currency. That's the most appropriate type for this column. Column D, we will change to text. And column E, we will change to text as well. And now we can mark step 4 as complete. A lot of questions in this video are covered as part of my ebook. If you're getting ready for Excel interview or assessment test, make sure to check out my ebook store to make sure you get prepared faster. In the next step, we would need to create an Excel table from the data. To do that, let's navigate to the Sales Data tab. We would need to highlight the entire table, so Control-Shift-N allows us to highlight it. And then we can either use Control-T, or in the Data tab, we can just use Insert and then click Table. And you see the shortcut for this is Control-T. And then we click Table. And then it prompts us to confirm the range for this table. We double check the range and it looks nice. And it also asks you to check my table has headers, which our table does. The row 1 contains headers, so we'll click OK. And now we can mark this step as complete. In addition to Excel questions during the interview, sometimes you might be asked questions specific to data analysis. One of these questions might be, how do you assess quality of the data model? Even though the answer might be different, I'm going to list you some specific questions you might ask to assess quality of the data model. For example, can model be easily consumed by end users, your customers, to help facilitate decision-making process? Can model easily support generation of output format reports or dashboards? Combination of these questions will help you to assess the quality of your data for future sustainability and also for the best way to present data to the end users. In the next step, we would need to split name column into first and last name using the text to column feature of Excel. To do that, let's analyze the column. And it looks like we have both first and last name in the column D, and it has purchaser name. To do that, let's select column E, right-click and click Insert. It added the new column E next to the column D, which would help us to put this extra value that will be created right into column E. Now let's use text to column feature. It's part of the Data tab. So I selected column D and then click on the text to column. It prompts me if I'd like to use text to multiple columns and what kind of delimiter we have. We have a space as the delimiter between first and last name. So we select delimited, then we'll click space. Make sure to select that. Then we click next. Now it split them accurately. We want to change the general data type into text data type because both of those are text. And then we click finish. And it shows that there is already column E in place and shows us the message there is already data here. Do you want to replace it? If we wouldn't have created column E, it would have overwritten the column F. So that's the reason we created column E. And we'll click OK on this message. And you see now it added the values. So instead of purchaser, column D we will call first name, and column E we will just call last name. And we can mark this step as complete. A lot of times my students ask me, what are the features of Microsoft Excel I can demonstrate to the interviewer to impress them the most? Even though it's hard to determine which particular feature would be valued by a hiring manager, typically I recommend you focus on the features that's important to the company, based on the company business and company's profile. For example, if this is a financial company, you might impress the manager with your knowledge of Excel stocks data type. Or if this is a manufacturing company, you might add value to the organization through your knowledge of pivot tables and Power Query. In the next step, we would need to split address to separate address and zip using Power Query. To accomplish this, let's use Power Query feature and let's analyze purchaser address. Looks like it has address without city and only contains street name and zip separated with the slash. Now, to use Power Query, we need to select this column, navigate to the Data tab, and then here click Get and Transform Data, and we'll be transforming it from the table /range. So let's click on this button. It launches the Power Query, and inside Power Query, let's find this column, which is our purchaser's address. Now we need to highlight the column here, do a right mouse click, and here we would use Split Column feature, and we will be splitting columns by delimiter. So let's select by delimiter, and Power Query is very smart, so it offered us slash as the delimiter, but as you can see, much better split would be space / space. So let's change that, and we'll use space / space. As you can see, it splitted both values. Now we need to change the name. So this would be street, this would be zip, and we can save and load it back into Excel. Excel created a separate tab for this. This is our original data, sales data, and this is the sheet 2, which we'll call sales data 2. And now we can mark this step as complete. I need your help. What are the questions that you see as part of Excel interview or assessment test? Can you please post them in the comments of this video? This will help me answer those questions, and together we'll be able to help others to get prepared for the interview faster. In the next step, we would need to determine the city based on the zip code and add it as a new column. Keep in mind that as part of this question, you are being tested for the latest features of Microsoft Excel. Geography data type was just recently introduced in the application. To do that, let's analyze the data. Now we have sales to data, so we have zip as a separate value. And right now zip is the text value. To do that, we need to use new feature of Excel called geographical data. To use this feature, we need to navigate to the Data tab, select our zip column, and click on Geography Data. It will basically go to Bing and will try to convert and determine if this is a valid zip code, which it did with some exceptions. For some zip codes, it wasn't able to do that, so we need to manually resolve it. I'll show you how to do it for one zip code. We just click on the question mark and it shows we need help with this text. And here in the data selector, it shows us the zip code. It's only 4 digits. In US, zip code is 5 digits, so we need to add a leading 0. And then we will click Enter. And it says that this is 07631 is Bergen County, New Jersey, which is correct. We click Select, and this resolved this. Ideally, you would want to go and resolve all of this. For the purpose of this video, I'm not going to do it because our step is to really add a city. And to do that, we need to keep this column G highlighted and then click the plus sign, and that's the coolest new feature of Excel. Ultimately, what happened, it went to Bing, queried each of these values, determined that this is a valid zip code, and now it knows what the city is, and we click Add Column, and we know that it can add city, which is one of the values. And you see for the ones where it was correctly recognized, the value of the city was determined accurately. We can obviously resolve all these errors manually, but there's another way to add leading zeros in Excel. So let's roll back by using undo for each of these steps. And before converting it into geography data type, I am going to add leading zeros to the zip column. To do that, I'm going to select the column. I'm going to select Control 1, which opens up Format Cells box, and then I'm going to click Custom. In the type box, I'm going to type 5 zeros, which would represent the format, that it's all numeric, and it should maintain 5 digits. I'm going to click OK, and you see that it added leading zeros for the values that were missing. And now we can convert zip into geography data type, and hopefully it would resolve all the errors. And you see it did resolve all the errors. Now we can add a city, and we'll expand city column. And the only place it didn't resolve it is for this value. So we would need to look into this, but looks like for the remaining zip codes, it was able to successfully resolve and find the city. Now we can go back and mark this step as complete. If you are getting ready for the interview, where you will be asked Microsoft Excel questions, make sure to check out my website to learn more about additional resources available to get you ready for the interview. In the next step, we would need to determine state based on the zip code and add it as a new column. To do that, let's navigate to the Sales Data 2 tab. We will select the zip code, and we'll click a plus button, and one of the values is the state, and we'll click the state. And as you can see, Excel determined by querying the Bing search engine states for all of the zip codes, and we can mark this step as complete. In the next step, we would need to create a pivot table from the data in the Sales Data 2 tab. To do that, let's navigate to the tab Sales Data 2. We can click on any cell in the table, and we'll need to click Insert and then Pivot Table. And it prompts us which table would you like to create pivot table from, which is table range, which is correct. We'll create it in a new worksheet. We'll click OK. And this is the pivot table that was created. By default, nothing is selected, no fields, but all the fields from the table are listed here. And we will be using those in the next steps of the exercise. But for now, we can mark this step as complete. But before that, let's rename that this would be our pivot table tab. And we can navigate back and mark this step as complete. My students often ask me, what is the best way to learn features of Microsoft Excel faster? I typically recommend experimenting. The best way to experiment is to download a sample set of data or maybe use a copy of production data. Using your data samples, you can then try to solve real business problems and answer specific business questions. Just remember, you can always go back by pressing Ctrl-Z. This is the undo function in Microsoft Excel. In the next step, we would need to determine total sales by state using pivot table. To do that, let's navigate to the pivot table, and it's very simple. Using pivot, we just need to select price because this is the total sales, and then state itself, and that shows us the sum of price. We can highlight it and mark this column as a $sign, but this is the total. Sometimes employer asks you to take a screen print of this. To do that, you just need to highlight the area and use Snip and Sketch tool in Windows 10, other tools on the Mac. Somehow take the screen print, or you can just copy the data and you can copy it as picture as well. You click OK, and if you're required to paste and demonstrate the values, you just paste it here, and that would be the values from this exercise, and we can mark this step as complete. One of the tricky questions you might be asked as part of your data analyst interview is, what are the biggest challenges that you might run into when doing data analysis? Even though each situation is different, I'll list you some criteria that you might present to the interviewer. For example, one of the challenges might be importing the data into Excel. For example, importing the data might be a challenge depending on which format you will get the data. This also gets exaggerated and more complicated for the bigger data volumes, especially if you're getting the data from the big data stores. You might also run into data cleansing challenges. For example, you might have a lot of duplicate values, so decision what you do with those duplicate values. Spelling mistakes is another challenge. How do you deal with those? Do you just leave them untouched, or do you fix the data? That's the question that you would have to answer as data analyst. Another thing is working with multiple data sources. How do you ensure referential integrity if you bring data from multiple data sources? Do they necessarily have unique keys that will help you join the queries when you're querying the data in Excel? Or is that a challenge? Or is this something that you need to add as an additional step in the process to ensure this referential integrity? Quality of the data. We've talked about spelling mistakes and unique keys. What about incomplete data, where you get blanks, something that hasn't been populated maybe by an user if this was a form data that was collected? What do you do with those blanks? How do you make sure that they get analyzed as well as part of your reports? And last but not least is, what are the best ways to present the data? Excel provides multiple ways to present the data. For example, you can generate pivot tables, you can do summary reports, you can do charts, you can do dashboards, and maybe come up with something unique of what you would like to do based on the data types. How would you pick the best format for the output to help decision makers, your end users, to answer business questions? In the next step, we would need to calculate sales by month using Power Pivot in Excel. So we navigate to the tab where we created Power Pivot. And here, what we need to do, we need to select our pivot table, and we just need to select price, and then we need to select month. And it shows us total sales by months. You see the total here matches the totals for sales for state that we calculated before. So we might want to highlight it and select dollar value, sum of price, copy the data, and then copy it as a bitmap, copy as picture, or you can copy as values, doesn't matter. Copy as picture, and then paste it right here on the screen, and type that this is sales by month. And we can mark this step as complete. In the next step, we would need to build a graph that shows sales by month. In the previous steps, we've already built a pivot table that shows sales by month. Now the only remaining task is to create a graph. To do that, we select all the areas with the months and then prices and sum of totals for the particular month. And then we just go to Insert tab And then we will pick any recommended charts because the instructions do not specify which chart do we want to use. And we can just start with recommended chart. And column chart represents sales the best. So we will just use the first clustered column. And this represents sales by month. We'll organize them a little bit. So we will move this sales by months a little bit to the right. And we will mark this step as complete. If you like this video, make sure to click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more tips and tricks on how to get prepared for Excel interview and assessment test. In the next step, we would need to create a map which shows sales by each state in the United States. We will start here by looking back at the sales data and creating a new pivot table from the sales data. To do that, we'll click on the Insert tab and click Pivot Table. We'll put our pivot table in the new worksheet and create it from a table. In the pivot table, we will select state and price, and it built a table to show sales by state. If we try to directly insert map chart, we will not be able to do that. We'll get this error message. So what we need to do, we need to copy the data and paste it as values. So to do that, we'll select the pivot table, create copy, and paste as values right next to it. We'll rename this row as state, and this would be sales. And now we will click Insert Map. It built a map which shows sales by state in the United States. We'll rename the chart. We'll call it Sales by State. It shows state by state in the United States, and we can mark this assignment as complete. And now, back to the original questions I asked earlier in this video. What is the process of data analysis? Data analysis is the process of collecting, cleansing, interpreting, and transforming and modeling data to gather insights and generate reports to help make business decisions. Typically, data analysis can be broken down into multiple steps. First step is identification of the sources. As part of this step, you look at different data sources available in organizations and try to understand the ways of extracting and importing the data from those data sources. Data import is where you extract the data from those sources identified in the first step and then bring it into Excel to get it cleansed and prepared for analysis. In this step of data import, you also need to make sure that you understand referential integrity, how you're going to join the data, and make sure you understand the ways of dealing with the blanks and understanding what should be removed maybe from the data that you bring into the analysis. The step of data analysis is where you look at the data once it's ready, once it has been imported, trying to find patterns and answer business decisions. In this step, you might also decide to build a model depending upon the data complexity. A lot of times you're doing data analysis in the iterative way. For example, in the first wave of iteration, you might just bring in the data and look at it initially, and then you realize you're missing something else to make a decision. Then you go to iteration 2, where you bring additional pieces of information to help you make better decisions. A lot of times also you can run it in an agile way, where you do it ongoing because business situation is changing and you need to improve your data analysis. And using iterative way is the best way to ensure comprehensiveness of the data model as part of analysis stage. And last but not least step in the data analysis is report generation. In this step, you look at the best ways to present the data to the end users to make sure you facilitate quality decision-making process. In the last assignment, we need to calculate which county in California has largest sales volume. This is a tricky question, as a lot of last questions are in Excel interview or assessment test. The reason it's tricky because the data we're trying to massage doesn't exist yet in the table. We would need to calculate it. To answer this question, we would need to look up the county values from the zip code and then use county data that was calculated. If we look at the sales data, we don't have a county here. So the trickiness of this question relates to the fact that we need to calculate the county. It's easy to do. You just click the plus button and add admin division 2 and calculate the county based on the zip code. So now once we've calculated the county, we need to build another pivot table which shows and calculates sales in California by county. Let's go and do it step by step. To do it, let's create a new pivot table. We'll click on Insert tab, select Pivot Table. We'll create Pivot Table in the new worksheet. And here, by default, it doesn't show the new calculated value. So what we need to do, we need to click on the Pivot Table and select Refresh. So now you see that we have state and the new value that we've added, admin division for county. To calculate which county in California had the largest sales, let's select price, let's select state, let's select the county itself. And you see that Excel helped us break down the data. And California is the second state listed, which shows all California counties. And the highest sales volume was for Los Angeles County, $38.85. And now let's go ahead and mark this final assignment as complete. If this video was helpful, make sure to click the like button and subscribe to my channel. For links mentioned, make sure to check the description of this video. To learn more on the topic, make sure to check my ebooks and online training courses. All the best on your interview and Excel assessment test. Make sure to check out my other relevant videos and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We have a lot of great stuff planned in the pipeline, and I don't want you to miss any of it. And if you'd like to get notified about all the new stuff that are coming out, make sure to subscribe to my email list as well. All links are here on the screen. Make sure to click to stay in touch. Thanks again for watching.